the issue of misinformation, disinformation, social media platforms, and how those have changed journalism have been topics of conversation at our conferences going all the way back. One of the things we're trying to do here, I think, as journalists and bringing people together to have these frank conversations is to figure out how we can make it a net positive. So my name is Ann Hartman. I am Director of the Professional Development Program at the East-West Center and Dean of our Education Program. I also was co-chair of this year's 2024 International Media Conference here in Manila. This is our 8th International Media Conference. We started this program in Bangkok in 2008 with the goal of bringing journalists together from across the Asia-Pacific region and the United States to really think about their shared challenges as journalists, to build a network and solidarity as journalists, and to think about how, by pooling our knowledge and resources across the region, we can think about perhaps new solutions to these shared challenges that journalists face. It also is an opportunity for journalists to get updated on what's happening across the Indo-Pacific region. So a fundamental pillar of every conference is always to think about what are the big issues facing the region: economic, geostrategic, social, and have an opportunity for journalists to learn from other journalists. We see journalists as the knowers. They are on the front lines. They are the experts. They're in the field. They're interviewing people one-on-one, face-to-face. So to have journalists bringing the issues from all of the different countries around the region to other journalists, we think is an important model and an important opportunity for journalists to update their information about specific countries or specific issues that they may not otherwise have an opportunity to know about. Yeah, great question. I think this is one of the big questions that we sought to explore at this conference. Obviously, the issue of misinformation, disinformation, social media platforms, and how those have changed journalism have been topics of conversation at our conferences going all the way back to 2018 in Singapore. But the advent of AI for all of these issues is something a little bit new for all of us, and I think it's happening faster maybe than we anticipated. I think what we saw at the conference was that it is both an opportunity and a challenge for journalism. I feel like the jury is still out for me. In part, that's why we have these explorations. I don't know that there are any answers, even whether or not it is a net positive or a net negative at this point. I think it's too early to say, and I think one of the things we're trying to do here, I think, as journalists and bringing people together to have these frank conversations is to figure out how we can make it a net positive. What are the guardrails we can put in place in advance? What are the things we need to be thinking about in advance in order to make sure that it is a tool that is useful and that we maintain control of, and not let it become a net negative? I think I'm in the camp that believes the kinds of damage that is being done by the just massive amounts of mis and disinformation through a variety of different platforms and means is already happening. And AI might add to that in some way, but I don't think that AI itself will be it may make it fundamentally a little bit different and may surprise us in certain ways, but I think that just the general dumping of misinformation and disinformation into the information ecosystem is far more dangerous and already very problematic. and will be for the US elections as well. Yeah, this ended up being a much more interesting discussion at our conference than I expected, and in part because I'm not a climate journalist, and so to hear from climate journalists about the challenges of how we both make it dramatic enough to get people's attention, but also not always just make it dramatic so that people tune out and start to feel like there is no solution, I think is really a big challenge and paradox. It's obviously critical. It's at a critical stage. We're seeing the results of climate change now much faster than we expected to, in the severe weather and the kinds of things that are actually playing out. I would actually love to see more stories about the financial implications of climate change. Like in the United States, we are seeing incredible increase in insurance costs for not just people that live in hurricane areas or flood plains, but all across the United States, and it's skyrocketing. And in part, this was very much predicted by people who were watching this issue closely. But again, we don't hear as much about some of these kinds of trickle-down impacts of climate change. And those are things that are already starting to affect the issues that are nearest and dearest to our voters, which is their pocketbooks and the bread and butter issues, as we say in the United States, kitchen table issues, which is how much things cost. And I think we're already starting to see the effects of that. And I think that's always an area that gets people's attention.